to pick up my first guest. Jeff, thanks a lot. Hopefully you'll stick on the line. I'll put you guys on hold. I'm sorry, guys. All right. Thanks, guys.
Right.
See you later, man.
Guys, I see my first guest on the line. I'm going to play a little solo from him and then pick up the great Kenny Aronoff.
Back to Around the Kit with Joe Gansas.
Guys, we are back. 646-787-8027. Pumped up is the word when I think of my next guest, a legend in the world of rock, drumming, anything drumming. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to Around the Kit the great Kenny Aronoff.
That was a nice introduction.
Kenny, what's up, brother?
How you doing? That was great, man. Where did you
Kenny,
get that solo from?
bro.
What was that solo from?
I think it was 2009. It was a clinic, if I'm, or it might have been an in-studio solo. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's definitely me. I just can't remember specifically, through my little iPhone here.
Yeah.
What date that was, but it certainly wasn't Jack and Diane with Mellencamp. I mean, that was as many notes in that solo as I would play in a whole night with John.
Kenny, first of all, let me just say thank you, brother, for giving me some of your time. It's an honor.
You're welcome. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. And where are we calling from? You're sounds like you're in New York.
Well, I'm in Staten Island, New York. You know the area?
There you go. No, I know the accent though.
Well, Kenny,
my mom grew up in the Bronx.
Okay. First of all, give me how's the weather in L.A. right now?
Believe it or not, it's overcast and a little bit of drizzle, which is a rare statement that you'll hear from somebody from Southern California.
Well, Kenny, as in New York, the last month, it's been 75 and 40, and I know you're familiar with the East Coast weather. So get me back a little bit. Take me back. What kind of town are we talking about when we come from Stockbridge, Massachusetts?
It's a town of 3,000 people, but it's a slice of, it's almost, when I was growing up, it was like a slice of the village, the New York village, where up there you had 3 miles from my house was the Boston Symphony Orchestra. There was Summer Stock Theater right down the hill from where I grew up. You couldn't see anybody where I grew up because we were all in the woods and in the country. But the first, I guess, if you want to call it next door neighbor, was a quarter mile away was Norman Mailer, the great author. And then there was actresses, and then there was Sigmund Freud's protege, Eric Erikson. I used to go to Norman Rockwell's house, the illustrator, and it was just filled with ballet. It was just a lot of intellectuals and very liberal, very cool place. It was very supportive, and that I have to say, between my parents and that kind of environment was conducive to being very positive, open-minded, and you felt like you could do anything. And the first thing that always came to my head was, oh, I can do this, I can do that, even if it was beyond my reach. Otherwise, how does a kid from a town of 3,000 who saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and 50 years later I'm playing with the two remaining Beatles?
Wow.
There's confidence there that would, and I mean, there were no drum teachers that were teaching rock and roll. There were no mentors to follow. There was no schools to go to study rock and roll. That's my point. So there was a kind of a persistence and confidence and willingness to go for it that made it possible to make it. And I mean, to me, the key to success is self-discipline, and then hard work supported by passion and desire to work hard, and ongoing education, being able to set a goal and then create a plan and execute that plan, and being able to have great communication skills, the ability to get along. I mean, there was an article in the New York Times once about me. It was about, they wanted to do an article on session musicians. They picked me, and they asked this great producer, Don Was, why do you hire Kenny Aronoff? I mean, there's plenty of great drummers in L.A., Nashville, New York. And he said, I hired Kenny because he's not just a great drummer, and there are a lot of great drummers. It said his ability to keep my sessions going and to motivate the room and to get along with everybody, and he has literally saved many, many, many sessions for me. And so it's not just about how great you play the drums. If a drummer starts getting that feeling of like, well, I'm better than that guy, it's way more to it in any job in the world than to just your talent. It's like if you took Led Zeppelin, or let's call Led Zeppelin a corporation, or the Beatles a corporation, or Queen a corporation, or Cream. Not one of those people in any of those bands is replaceable. I mean, they are replaceable in that you could put somebody in their place. But it was the vibe of all those people in that one corporation or that one band that made that band successful. That's the part when we're young kids that we don't understand. That's why Ringo Starr was so brilliant. Of course, there's lots of drummers that have more technique than Ringo Starr, but that his contribution as a human being, vibe, spirit, ideas, along with his drumming, his feel and stuff like that, made that band and influenced the other guys. It's just like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, a great basketball player, couldn't win any of those NBA tournaments without having that team around him. Right. It was about the team. It was about, and so I learned all this stuff. I think I had a good value system, a good foundation that made it possible for me to become successful, and even more importantly, to stay successful. Nowadays, when people talk about they want things to just come to them, listen, I got an equation. Doing nothing equals nothing. 0 equals 0.
Great.
If you do nothing, you get nothing. And if you're sitting at home being coddled by parents and waiting for the big break, even if you got the big break, you'd lose it, you'd blow it, because you do not have not put in your time. You do not have the wisdom, the understanding to be able to handle a heavy situation. You can get lucky, but you'll lose it. I look at it this: dreams come true if you work your ass off. This is way beyond playing the drums. This is life. And my journey as a drummer and in rock and roll and classical music and all the other things I've done is simply a journey. It's a journey about becoming the best person I can in life, which applies to my career. I've made mistakes. I've been fired. I've been hired. I've had my head between my legs. But the overall picture, like a running back, I have fumbled the ball, but I'm still trying to get touchdowns. My goal is always the goal line. I'm constantly looking at the end zone. I don't spend time in worrying about the guy who just tried to crush me. I'm thinking about getting back up and going for that end zone. That's my life right there.
Great stuff. Guys, we are talking to the legend himself, Kenny Aronoff. Kenny, I have my least favorite word in life, and I bring up a lot, but I think you'll understand it the most. My least favorite word is can't. Don't tell me I can't do something. Let me try and let me fail. But until I've done that, don't tell me I can't do something. I can't stand when someone says you can't, you can't. You know what it means to me,
Right.
Kenny? It means failure. It means laziness. It means you don't want it.
Well, it's the same thing I'm saying. If you don't, it's a zero on the left side of the equation,
Right.
and 0 equals 0. So it's for me. I feel the same way as you do. It's always yes. It's always yes, and then try to figure out how to do it. Even if you fail, by attempting that, while you're trying to succeed, you're learning so much and you're experiencing so much. There is no failure in trying. There is no failure in trying. The only thing that's failure is when you don't try, because 0 equals 0. That's failure. And I tell people get paralyzed and they say, you know, it's a crazy time right now. The world is moving so fast, exponentially every year faster, you know, with the internet and stuff. Just like you don't have to reach the moon in one day. One step at a time. And one step is better than no steps. That's my point. You've got to look at the long haul. It's not going to come overnight. It's not going to come fast. And we're being fooled by so much instant gratification and instant this and instant that. But the things that have serious value are the things that take time. And the biggest investment that anybody can make in life is in themselves. And that's whether it's education. Well, it is education. It's learning something, but over a long period of time, which gives you a lot of depth. And it's the journey, the experience of that journey is the biggest part of the education. You have to go through that journey, make mistakes, learn from your mistakes, correct things. It's that journey is the education, and that's the investment in yourself.
Just great stuff. Kenny, let's go back a little bit because I want to talk about your time in college and stuff. Take me back to 72 and 76 in Indiana University and working with timpanist George Gaber. What was that like?
Well, and Vic Firth also. These guys. Okay, because there was no rock and roll school back then, and in my family, everybody went to college. It was the American dream. You know, you go to college, you learn a trade, you graduate, you get a job in that field that you studied. That was the American dream, and I did. I did 5 years of university, 1 year at UMass, and 4 years at Indiana University. And at that time, Indiana University was the #1 school in America, the biggest and #1, and it still may be #1. Actually, it is #1 right now. The facilities outrank all facilities in any other university. Just humongous music program. And anyway, my point is, there because I didn't know, because I studied classical music and there was no rock and roll school back then. When I graduated, I got a job in Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra, and I got a job in Quito, Ecuador, and I just couldn't do it. I'd spent 5 years doing it, but I really still wanted to be in the Beatles. So, but during that time, I learned so much discipline. I mean, guys like George Gaber. When I showed up for my first lesson, it wasn't my first, but there was a lesson once when I walked in. George Gaber was looking at a lesson plan that he was taking notes and doing some work. And he tapped his desk, looked me in the eye, tapped his desk, saying, "I want your lesson book." I put my lesson book down there, and I stood in front of him, and he's still doing his work, and he turns to the page where I had an assignment. And one of the assignment was all these scales, starting with right hand 2 octaves, left hand 2 octaves. He looks at it and he goes, F-sharp harmonic minor, start with your right hand 3, 4, I'm still standing there with my, music in my hand and my mallets and sticks still in my bag. And he looks at me and he goes, "Kenny, are you happy here at Indiana University?" I was like, wow. I mean, this is the type of man he was. He was really getting inside my head to tell me, dude, basically what he was telling me was he was questioning me and challenging me. If you're serious about being a great percussionist, then when you walk in here, you will give me your lesson book and you'll stand at attention ready to perform at the instrument. This is not, he was trying to whip me into shape. This guy was extremely disciplined, and I saw guys get washed out of that school all the time. They almost having nervous breakdowns. George was a perfectionist. There was no coddling. It was military style. A great guy, and he would give you tremendous knowledge and support. But if you didn't deliver, he wanted you out of there. And I believe in that method strongly. If you don't, in a school like that, if you're the type of person that shouldn't be in that school, then you shouldn't go to that school. And most likely, you wouldn't get into that school. But once you're in, if you don't measure up, he will wash you out. That's the kind of training that, got me prepared for doing things like the Kennedy Center honors, Obama's inauguration, do-or-die situations where you're under pressure and where you're in the trenches and nobody's holding your hand. And I don't believe everybody should get a trophy. I think that when I hear about that, it makes me vomit. Not everybody's supposed to get a trophy, folks. If you don't get a trophy, you want the trophy, then work your ass off. And if you're not talented enough, then pick another field. Coddling people is not helping people become successful, and it's only making the hard workers work harder, because then we have to take care of the coddlers because they can't take care of themselves. And I know it sounds tough, but I know I'm right.
No.
I think that people should work to their potential, always. Everybody to their potential.
It makes so much sense. And talk to me about your guy mentioned before, another guy who was a nice guy, but a no-nonsense guy, and was working with and learning with Vic Firth. Was that a vital point in your life?
Absolutely, because Vic was the type of guy, he was the master of focusing and getting the job done. And if you weren't prepared, here's how a lesson would go. Basically, I'm saying, if you weren't prepared, then your lesson was over in 10 minutes. And he was nice about it, but he didn't have any patience for inadequacies or mediocrity. Sadly, mediocrity has become acceptable today in a lot of areas. But what he would do is if you made a mistake on let's say an excerpt, a snare drum, or a timpani excerpt, I studied timpani with him. Right. If you made a mistake, he would say, no, it's like this. Do it like this. If you made that mistake again, then you were done with that page for the day.
Wow.
It was that simple. So if you had 5 pages to prepare for him, and you weren't prepared, your lesson would be over in probably 10 minutes. And then he'd say, pay me, I'll see you next week. And then he wasn't mean. He just didn't. There was no fooling around. And
right. Yeah.
And I like that about him. It was all straight lines. But see, working with a guy like that, working with a George Gaber, working under the baton of Leonard Bernstein and the fierce Seiji Ozawa, these guys, if you could measure up to them, then you were setting the bar high for what perfection was, and what, if you could handle that, then you could handle a CEO at a demanding corporation, or a ruthless conductor, or a ruthless band leader where they expect the best. I mean, listen, working with John Mellencamp was not easy. He had been messed with so many times. I defend him for being a tough son of a bitch, but he'd been messed with so much that this guy, it wasn't a party anymore by the time I got in the band. It was like, I lost my record deal once, and I've been screwed over by managers and lawyers and accountants and the record business, and I want to be a star, and the only way I'm going to do it is to beat the crap out of everybody in my way. I didn't understand it at the time, but he was no different than Vic Firth or George Gaber or, a tough conductor. He had realized how difficult it was to be successful, and he realized how how hard we had to work to get, hopefully, become successful. So all this preparation in classical music prepared me for being a hard worker and be able to get the job done. And all that training still is even extremely valuable now when you're trying to stay successful and stay relevant. You know, at my age, I got my own studio, I'm still recording, I'm still touring, I'm still doing the same things I was doing and that I was doing when I got the John Mellencamp band in 1980. It's just that the rules have changed, and so I'm adapting. And it's the still same principles: self-discipline, hard work, you know, fueled by passion and education, re-educating yourself, setting goals, creating a plan, executing them. Same principles. It's just that the lay of the land has changed. There's no shortcuts, folks. No shortcuts. If you're looking for shortcuts, you're going to get smoked by people like me.
Yeah. You see how you're talking, Kenny, and we're talking to the great Kenny Aronoff. You see what these guys did for you, and George and Vic. Before we mentioned them, you were talking like them. So, you know what they've done to you. They've instilled some values on you that you use today, and that's great stuff.
You said the key word, values.
Yeah.
Because values are like, you should operate by values. Mm-hmm. Not to be religious, but let's use the Ten Commandments as an example. The reason why they had rules and regulations or values, that when you were in an emotional state of mind or when you were in a confused state of mind or you didn't know what you should do, you look up on the wall and you see the Ten Commandments that says, oh, yeah, I'm not supposed to kill anybody. Right when you want to bust somebody's brains open, you look at that and you go, oh, yeah, right, thou shalt not kill. That's why you have to have a value system. So these guys taught me values, like George Gaber, always have a pencil, always have a music paper, always come early, always be prepared, always do your homework, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on. And so you have these value systems.
Right.
And sometimes I would be the only guy, you know, you feel alone sometimes, very presidential, where you're making decisions. Other people aren't doing it like you, but you believe in those values, so you do them anyway. And you stand alone, but, man, you reap the successes. You reap the rewards of following those value systems, those disciplines. It's great, man. Yeah, they taught me all that. I love it.
Great. Kenny, let's go back a little bit. Give me a couple minutes on this great band you had called the Alley Cats.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it great, but it was okay. To the people listening, see, when I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, me and my brother my parents basically kicked us out of the house all the time because we were so hyper and energetic. And, so one day my mom screamed, says, you got to come into the family room. And I thought I was in trouble. And what it was, the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show. And I was stunned. I was shocked. And I turned to my mom and said, I want to be in the Beatles. Call them up. And she didn't respond. I said, I watched a little longer. And I went, no, I want to be in the Beatles. I want to grow my hair. And I went, wow, look at that drum set. I want to play the drums, Mom. And I went on, and obviously the Beatles never called me, and my mom never called the Beatles. I was 11 years old. So I started my own band a month later called the Alley Cats, and we played Beatles music and Beach Boys music. And that was the beginning of, and all I could afford was a snare drum that I bought. I borrowed the money from my mom and dad. They actually went to New York to Manny's and got my first snare drum and cymbal. And I was gardening at 25 cents an hour. That's what my gardening fee was. And I eventually paid them back, And that was the beginning.
Great stuff. I know you were talking before, and I know another saying that I made up. It goes like this: surround yourself with positive people. Don't let negative people surround you. Is one of those positive people in your life your wife, Georgina, and is she always there for you?
Yeah. Yes, of course. That's why I married her. Yeah, she's very we coach each other.
Right.
Now she grew up in England where she came from a different kind of. She was hearing like I grew up where it was always yes you can do this, yes you can do that. She grew up where it was like nah maybe you better not or no you shouldn't. But she has that same kind of drive I do, and so I coached her and she's like so now we're a team. You know we're constantly there is no there's only yes and we keep. And when you do say no, you correct that very quickly. And so she's in an intensive, like a nursing program to be a nurse practitioner. You know, she's studying like chemistry, statistics, anatomy, the study of diseases. I mean, it's a pretty intense course. I mean, it's 7 days a week, work, and we support each other. You know.
Mm-hmm. Kenny, talk to me about something. I know you're passionate, and it's part of the drum set, the 15-inch hi-hat, and why you love it so much.
Wow, you did your homework. Well, I've always loved the 14-inch new beat hi-hats. I most of the time use 15s now, but I love the 14s. Those are the two most perfect hi-hats made. The Zildjian new beat hi-hats because they're so musical. The reason why I use the 15s a lot is because in most cases, the microphones that are around my kit tend to pick up, if you dial them in on your toms and the overheads, they tend to pick up the brightness of the cymbals. When I went to the 15s, they were a little bit lower in frequency, and they blend into the drum kit better. That's why I do it. And I also like it's a little bit lower sonics, and I play hi-hats hard, and therefore, if I'm playing a really heavy rock thing, they blend into the kit, and they don't dominate the sound of the kit. Because sometimes I played so hard that they've turned the hi-hat mic off, and it's still too loud. So, I do that, and there's all kinds of tricks I've gotten into with, like in my studio, I have a lot of. Every mic, if I want it, goes through a Neve, 1073 or 1084.
Right.
But I've got 11 APIs also. The APIs tend to be a little bit brighter and pick up those hi-hats. The Neves are warmer, so I'll put like a hi-hat mic through a Neve, preamp and EQ, and I'll run the same with the ride cymbal, the overheads, so it'll warm those cymbals up. Because, man, I'll give you an example. In Nashville, drummers don't usually overdub, and I was doing a session where you get one listen and they make a chart. The second listen, we're watching the chart. We're looking at the chart, and these are number charts. If anybody knows what a number chart is, it's a different way of writing. They write like if you're in the key of A, number 1 is A. If you're in the key of A, then the number 5 would be the 5 chord, which would be E. And if you're in the key of A, there's a 4 on that chart would be D, and so forth. The advantage of using numbers would be that if you change the key, you just go. If you go from A to now you're in the key of B, that number 1 is now a B, and the 5 is an F sharp, and stuff like that. It just makes it easy to transpose. Anyway, we listen to a song which is incredibly well demoed. It could almost be a master. Somebody makes a chart, then we listen one more time, then we go out and record. And there's usually, that could be 7 people recording, bass, 3 guitars, pedal steel, fiddle, singer, drums, everybody all at once. And you get only a couple takes, and they expect the drummer to have nailed everything. Time, feel, sounds, everything. Maybe 3-4 takes the most. My point is I walked in and I'm listening to the playback. It was the last song of the day, and the producer came up to me and he went, "You're not happy with your drum part?" I said, "No, the hi-hats. They sound, it's like there's the drum kit, and then all of a sudden it was like the hi-hats were overdubbed. They're not blending in with that kit right." He said, "You want to overdub again?" I said, "Yeah, and nobody does that, but he let me do it." And I changed the hi-hats to 15 inches.
Nice.
Now, here's the amazing thing about that. suddenly, now my hi-hats were blending in, and the kit sounded more like a kit. The other great thing about that was the frequencies that those 14-inch hi-hats were in were covering up and masking some of the frequencies in the acoustic guitar and electric guitars.
Okay.
And once I switched to 15s, you heard the guitar parts better now.
Great
It was
stuff.
amazing. It was fantastic. You know?
Kenny, you're one of the and guys, we are talking to the great Kenny Aronoff. He's been gracious enough to lend us some time. He is so busy. You're one of the first guys I've seen doing this. Now more guys are doing, putting the 10-inch with a 12-inch. Talk to me about that playing. Usually it's 10, 12. You have usually 12. You have it backwards.
Yeah, it's 12, 10. Well,
right.
I started that in 1981, and the only reason why I did it was when I got in John Mellencamp band, I had this humongous big drum set, and it almost cost me my gig, because when I auditioned, I came with double bass drum, 11 toms, and he couldn't believe it. He was disgusted. It was that and the oil leaking from my second-hand car on his driveway that pissed him off. But anyway, yeah, I have an autobiography coming out in the fall, and that's in there. Johnny mentioned it because he's one of the guys interviewed. He talks about I couldn't believe Kenny came. He had that oil car leaking on the driveway. I told him to get it off my driveway and put it on the road. Anyway, when I eventually broke down to what John wanted, which was like a Charlie Watts Ringo Starr kit, one rack tom, one floor. And when we went on tour, I wanted to. I stuck another floor tom behind the other one, so you couldn't see it from the audience. I just ignored what John said. So I had 12, 16, 18, and the 18 was tucked in, so it looked like I had one. And but the engineer said, and I didn't have my Tama drum endorsement right then. It was later that year I got one, but I had like Evans hydraulic heads, and on that 18-inch there was no hardware on the bottom of the drum, so it was just a single-headed tom. And the engineer came up to me and said, "Man, do you have any smaller toms? Because those floor toms we can't hear the definition." And I think we were opening up for the Kinks in the arenas, and those toms, he said, they're just like getting lost. I can't get anything out of them.
Right.
Definition. So I said, well, I do have a 10-inch or whatever I had back then, another tom. It's smaller, but John's not going to, he doesn't want that look. And then I said, well, why don't you if I ask to put it up there, he'll tell me to go to hell. If you tell him to do it, just tell him, I tell you what, tell him that his vocals will sound better if that drum's up there. I was just fooling around. And I'm sure he didn't say that, but next thing you know, whatever he said, John said it was okay. So I had two tom-toms, but I had them on snare stands. And I had a 24-inch kick drum, so those tom-toms were like a mile apart from each other because, the snare stands are on the outside of the bass drum. And that became sort of my look and my thing. And I just never went back.
Well, Kenny,
except when I went out with Chickenfoot, I did it. When I went with Chickenfoot, I decided to get rid of the 10-inch tom and just go put the cymbal, right over the bass drum.
Is it fair to say? I'm not saying you, but if someone isn't familiar with that can be trouble for them. They can make mistakes because they're playing a song and they want to do a roll and they want to do a nice roll from high to low toms. Could it be a mistake for somebody or trouble for them?
Well, I'm sure somebody was trying to transcribe my parts in the early days, not knowing I had that setup. Going, wait a minute, how the heck did he do that? He went from high to low to medium up to high. Well, the other thing is, think about this. If you go to a fill, you can start with your right hand on the 10-inch tom, which is to your right, and the left on the 12-inch, and just you get one note. That's it.
Right.
And also, what I liked was I was like mixing. It gave me a different sound. Do do da da do 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 da da do 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 do.
Right.
That kind of da 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 do 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 that kind of thing. I actually made me think about what pitches I wanted to hit, and not just hit something.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Guys, we're talking to the great Kenny Aronoff. Kenny, you've worked with so many people. I mean, I'd be here till like December if I named everybody you play with. Just the list of people is just tremendous. What is it about Kenny Aronoff that all these people want to instill their confidence in you?
Well, I mean, I haven't spoken to everybody, but from being objective, after writing my book and spending 3 years having to open up all the calendars, which from 1977 until now, which had every session, every tour, every day of my life I had something in that calendar. And when I looked at it, I never listened to the stuff I recorded. I don't really like it because I have this phrase that I'll never be as great as I want to be, but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying to be as great as I can be, because I'm just never satisfied, and so it kind of bums me out to hear, I could have done that better, I could have done that better. So what I did was I was like a squirrel, and I'd get a nut and throw it in the closet and never look at that nut again. But when I wrote this book, I opened the closet and all the nuts came flying down on me, and I evaluated my whole life, and I couldn't believe how many people I'd recorded with in such different genres. Everything from playing with, like Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings and Chris Christopherson, the most heavyweights of country music, to playing with B.B. King and, Buddy Guy and Ray Charles in that, arena, to playing with Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath and the Pumpkins, Alice Cooper, and then to be playing with the little girls, when that became big, which was a whole new way of recording. Michelle Branch, Avril Lavigne, Alanis Morissette, on. And then, of course, the staples, John Mellencamp, the singer-songwriters, John Mellencamp, Bob Seger, Joe Cocker, Rod Stewart,
Meatloaf.
John.
Yeah.
Meatloaf, of course. Well, that was definitely a different way of recording because of Jim Simon. But what I started to examine was, that question was, I started asking it. Other people had sort of said something. And to answer that question as briefly as I can, it's because for the singer-songwriter, I figured out that my purpose as a drummer, the big picture, was to get their song on the radio and be number one. Whatever it took to get their song, the person paying me to play with them, to get on the radio and be number one. It wasn't about, it's about your snare drum sound and your kick drum. That's part of it. But every decision, every beat, every move I made was my job was to get their song to get on the radio and be number one. Now that's the big picture. That's the Super Bowl. Once I figured that out, then people start seeing that I'm not only showing up to be a great drummer, but I'm showing up to do a great job. And part of that was, what can I do for you, sir? Mm-hmm. How can I make your song better? What can I do for the team? What can I do for you? It's not about me anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm part of a team. I'm an employee. And I learned that lesson when I showed up after being in the band for 5 weeks with Mellencamp. I went out to dinner with the producer, Steve Cropper, and we were supposed to come back at 7. I did come back at 7. The band did, but I stayed with Steve Cropper because he wanted a drinking buddy. We went out and drank a little bit, came back maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours late. John looked at me, and he was furious, and his eyes were spinning, and smoke was coming out of his ears. He said, "Kenny, you're fired." And he had an F word before that.
Right.
"You're fired." And Steve Cropper said, "Hey, John, man, it's my fault. It's my fault. I kept this out." John turned to him and said, "I don't give an F about what you think. Kenny works for me. He doesn't work for you. You're the producer. Kenny works for me. And that's when I went, oh, my God. Is he right or is he right? What am I doing drinking with the producer? I'm like, just because the producer says, yeah, let's have some drinks, that's not what John said, be back at 7, be back at 7. So I learned how to work for people like this. And so it's, besides playing, I think these people see that, obviously I'm talented enough to produce, and I have a sound, and I bring a lot to the table. At this point, it's not just drumming. It's like I know how to produce a record. I know how to get a song. I know a lot about everything, basically. So
right.
I think, and the other thing is I really, really always enjoyed playing different styles of music. And a lot of people made fun of me. The jazz guys made fun of me because I played classical. Classical guys made fun of me because I played jazz. They both made fun of me because I played rock. The R&B people, made fun of me because I played rock. The rock people made fun of me because I played fusion. I mean, everybody, country people, whatever. The point is, I didn't care. I did it all. And you know what? Doing it all over a long period of time made me an expert at being able to play all styles of music. So when I did the Kennedy Center honors the first year, which is the Super Bowl of Super Bowl gigs, the first segment, basically you make a mistake, a big mistake, you'll never be asked back. Second of all, you have to be able to read your ass off. Third of all, you have to be able to play all styles of music. So like the first Kennedy Center honors, I'm in the band honoring The Who. So I'm playing with Dave Grohl, Chris Cornell, Rob Thomas, and a whole bunch of other guys playing Who songs. And as soon as I was done, I had to run to the dressing room, change into some other clothes, come back up, and now I'm playing with 7 country artists honoring George Jones. Total different style of drumming. Total different snare drum. You don't beat the hi-hats. You barely touch the hi-hats. You play in the middle to the back of the beat. You don't hit a rim shot when you hit the snare. You hit the center of the snare. You don't beat the crap out of the bass drum. You support the tone of the bass player. There's a whole different world. But I had learned it from working in Nashville. So anyways, that's part of the big picture of why people would hire me, I imagine.
Great.
Great. And I'm grateful.
My favorite one was when you backed up Steven Tyler and you did the Beatle medley. That was great, brother.
Oh yeah, I was definitely very concerned about doing that correctly, since everybody in the world, drummer or non-drummer, knows that drum solo at the end of
that little solo. Bum, bum, bum,
yeah.
bum.
Yeah. And when you're nervous, all your foot has to do is do something weird, and then the beat is, and the trick was, for me, play it with power and conviction, but don't play too hard or you're going to speed up, and don't play too light or you're going to sound like a wimp. I was very aware of it.
Yeah, and you did a great job. Kenny, give me a fast story from one of the greatest drummers ever. What's the spot where you broke a skin live and you had to compensate? Could you remember one spot? Maybe you broke a bass drum skin, or give me one story.
1986 Scarecrow tour in Montreal at the Forum, sold out hockey arena. We're like no opening act, 3-hour show. We were like the biggest thing at that time, and I went through the bass drum, and and thank God we were doing a simple song like "Hurt So Good." So I'm not a fight or flight kind of guy. I'm a fight or fight. So when I get something like that happens, I completely adrenaline goes into serious mode, and I'm going to do something. So I don't know why, I just instinctively said, okay, your floor tom now is your bass drum. So I started playing the kick drum with my right hand on the floor tom and let the hi-hat go and played the snare drum. So it was like boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba. And John turned around and was laughing, and my tech, I cannot believe he did this. My tech, it was his first tour, and he tried to patch it. He put something on the hole. I'm like, are you kidding me? Dude, I'm going to blow that patch right through it, which I did. Get the goddamn bass drum off the stage, put a new head on, and bring it back. Patch it? Are you kidding? It's like standing in front of a herd of bulls saying, "Stop! I'm going to run you over." I mean, come on. So yeah, that was it. Yep. And I hadn't done that until last year. I did it, and it was in Canada again for some reason. On a Fogarty tour, blew right through the head, and
Kenny, real fast before we end this great conversation, again, for the drummer out there, that young guy, that guy who's saying to himself, forget about everything. I'm great. I know it all. Bring him back to life right now, Kenny. What would you say to him?
Well, no, nobody ever knows it all. Just like I said, I'll never be as great as I want to be, but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying to be as great as I can be. That's the human condition. We're not robots. We're not computers. We're always learning. If you feel, and we all feel that adrenaline and that rush of testosterone, that we're bad mofos. But, nobody, as much as we all would love to be the greatest and the best, I mean, I was named in that clump of 100 best drummers of all time by Rolling Stone, and everyone's fighting, arguing, he shouldn't be in the list, or this other guy should be higher. I got so many people saying, he should be way higher. Hey, you know what? I'm just glad I'm in the list. Because, there is no number one best drummer. To some people, this guy might be number one. To some people, that guy might be number one. The point is, just be a bad mofo and realize that there's other bad mofos around, and be a champion knowing that there's other champions. And just keep trying to be as good as you can be and do the best you can be, and if you love yourself one day, I guarantee you, stick around. There'll be a day you'll go like, man, I suck. I mean, it's a roller coaster. Do the best you can. Enjoy your life. It's great to be competitive. It's great to be a tough mofo and go for it. That's great, man. But the reality is, man, it's a long journey, and you never can be the best mofo every day of your life. This is too many people out there. Just go out there and kick ass, keep your head down, and keep scoring touchdowns.
Well, Kenny Aronoff, let me just say this, and I'm not going to say mofo. You're a bad motherfucker behind this set, bro.
Thank you, man. I didn't know I could have said fucker.
I mean, for you to come on this show tonight, you've made my show better. When I watch you, Kenny, every time I learn something, every time I watch you, I learn something. It could be something so small, the way you play, the way you conduct yourself. One of the best drummers ever. I don't care if you're playing reggae, African, it's Kenny Aronoff. And I thank you for this time, brother. Kenny, at the end of my interview, I ask my guests one question, and their answer is their answer. I do not debate it. Kenny, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate this interview.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Because you asked me the right questions. You asked me in a short period of time, you asked me questions that made me tell a lot about drumming and life and humans and the whole picture. I don't know any other way of saying it. Your questions led me down the path beyond drumming, music. It got into life lessons, which is really the big picture.
Kenny, I thank you so much. And for everybody out there, the two words that Kenny has tried to talk about tonight the most, the two words, hard work, hard work, hard work. Kenny, from myself and everybody around the kit, you're a gentleman, a legend, and I hope down the road we can do this again, brother.
I will, man. As long as I'm breathing, you're going to see me kicking some ass.
Kenny Aronoff, we thank you so much, brother. We will continue to follow your drumming journey, and you're the best, bro. God bless.
Thanks. Awesome. Thank you for having me on the show, and I hope everybody enjoyed the interview. Take care, man.
All right, man. Thanks, Kenny.
All right. Bye.
I'm just trying to figure out where the fuck I am right now. I just had Kenny Aronoff. You know, guys, I'm going to say this right now, and I know Carl's still on the line. That's the best interview I've had on the show, period. No questions. He took us into his life. Wow. I had goosebumps the whole time. Guys, going to play a little promo.